Okay, in this video, we are going to be looking at Chael Sonnen's latest video and how he is preparing us, the audience, for the idea that Merab Dvalishvili may not be the next person to actually be getting a title shot in the bantamweight division. He draws these comparisons between Sean O'Malley, Ilia Topuria, Volkanovski, Israel Adesanya, and talks about how so many fighters have had previous opponents set up for them in the past, but when actually push comes to shove and it comes down to the day of actually who is going to be fighting for the championship, it doesn't always go the way that we expect it to go. Now, I've talked about Chael Sonnen before in the past. There's a certain way to look at Chael Sonnen and understand the information that he is delivering to us, the audience, okay? Chael Sonnen was one of the first people out there to be on YouTube making MMA content. You know, it used to just be these publications like Bloody Elbow, MMA On Point, the sort of legacy media people that were out there giving us our MMA information. And Chael Sonnen was one of the few independent voices that were out there on YouTube. But ever since then, it's become very obvious that Chael Sonnen is just an industry plant. He is just there as someone who is paid for by the UFC to go out there and give us information to see how it actually sits with us, the audience, or to tell us how the UFC is thinking. Pretty much whenever Chael Sonnen delivers us a little bit of information, he is trying to say to us, this is what the UFC is thinking. The UFC are using it as a tester to see how is the MMA audience going to handle it. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? And it also puts conversations out there in the MMA world, in the MMA atmosphere for things that the UFC might be planning on doing. And what I am going to be looking at in this video is one of them. Sean O'Malley is one of those fighters that is getting the Israel Adesanya treatment. He's being protected by the UFC and being built up as a star. You look at the decision that Sean O'Malley got over Petr Yan, and that was essentially a robbery for Sean O'Malley, like literally a robbery. He cheated all the way through the last 2 rounds of that fight. And considering that it was only a 3-round fight, that's a lot of bloody cheating. Then he got to sit out for an entire year and then have the then champion Aljamain Sterling on a quick turnaround for himself. He got a year off to heal up as much as he could, got Aljo on a quick turnaround. Sean O'Malley has been pretty protected by the UFC, and now Chael Sonnen is going ahead and he's released this video. The video is literally titled, Sean O'Malley May Say No to Merab Dvalishvili. But let's sit down and actually listen to this video together and break down what Chael is saying, because the information that he's giving us is a what if Sean O'Malley loses, okay? Let's jump straight into this.
So when we were picking #1 contenders and we're saying who's next in line, we were never considering that O'Malley would lose the very belt that we're discussing. So the second that he does lose the belt, by proxy, at least in my mind, he falls to #1 contender. At least within my mind. I mean, that argument is going on right now at 145 pounds with Volkanovski. What should we do with Volk? Well, you give him a match with Topuria. Why would we do that? Because he's the #1 contender. He was the champion. Okay, great. Sold.
Shall we hear that again? Shall we listen to that again? According to Chael Sonnen, if Sean O'Malley loses, he drops instantly down to #1 contender. Volkanovski just lost, so he can now drop to #1 contender and is next in line for Ilia Topuria. So if Sean O'Malley loses, he would be the next one, #1 contender, so he would be the next one for Marlon Vera? Is that what Chael's implying here? I'm pretty sure that's what Chael's implying here. Let's just make sure we heard that properly.
We're never considering that O'Malley would lose the very belt that we're discussing. So the second that he does lose the belt, by proxy, at least in my mind, he falls to #1 contender. At least within my mind. I mean, that argument is going on right now at 145 pounds with Volkanovski. What should we do with Volk? Well, you give him a match with Topuria. Why would we do that? Because he's the #1 contender. He was the champion. Okay, great. Sold.
So there's Chael Sonnen saying if Sean O'Malley loses, he's going to be the #1 contender. Which means that if Sean O'Malley loses, the UFC are going to be putting him in a position for a rematch. The idea that Sean O'Malley might lose this fight must be terrifying Dana White, terrifying him. And if Sean O'Malley loses this fight and actually goes ahead and gets a rematch, Sean Strickland and Aljamain Sterling should riot. They should riot. They should go to the Apex, get as many fans as they can. Well, I mean, if Sean Strickland actually gets all of these fans together, the UFC is going to have a goddamn problem. But they should go down to the Apex and just start marching up and down the street demanding to get their title shot. The whole reason that everyone seems to be arguing that Israel Adesanya should be getting the next title shot over Sean Strickland is that Sean Strickland doesn't have enough title defenses. He was a one-time champion. Sean O'Malley losing this weekend will be making him a one-time champion. You cannot, the UFC cannot possibly have Sean O'Malley, have Sean Strickland lose a split decision to Dricus du Plessis, and have Sean O'Malley lose to Marlon Vera, and then only give Sean O'Malley the rematch. That would be wild. And if they do that, it just further solidifies this new era of UFC that we're in, this new TKO era, this WWE-ifying of the UFC, where John Jones just gets to fight Stipe Miocic for the undisputed title, even though that Tom Aspinall is a interim champion. Obviously, Tom Aspinall should be the next one for John Jones, but we're just going to ignore that. Bilal Muhammad could win 100 fights in a row. We're just going to ignore that. Merab Dvalishvili can win 1,000 fights in a row. We're just going to ignore that and give it to Marlon Chito Vera. If the UFC go ahead and actually give Sean O'Malley an immediate rematch, it is going to be such hypocrisy in the face of what just happened with Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis, and the fact that they even have their mouthpiece up here, Cheal Sonnen, even alluding to the idea is wild to me. Wild to me.
That becomes a little bit hard to do when the guy's cage side, you brought him out, the cameras have already thrown to him, and your announce team has already informed the world. It can be done. I'm just sharing for you. It becomes a little bit harder to do.
It can be done. It can be done. We can change who the number one contender is. It can be done. It just becomes incredibly hard to do. It's going to be so interesting to see how the UFC actually handle Sean O'Malley's loss if he does lose. My prediction is that it is going to be a damn boring fight. It's also going to be an incredibly close fight. I think Sean O'Malley is going to win the first 2 rounds. I think Marlon Vera is then going to decide that this is his only chance to get a title shot, and he's going to start pressing the action against Sean O'Malley. It is going to come down to a split decision. It's going to be rather boring. It's going to be leg kicks from range, and when it does come down to a split decision, if Sean O'Malley loses that split decision, the UFC are going to go ahead and say, well, it was a close fight. We don't really know who won. It was very competitive. It was very exciting. I think we need to go back and do the rematch, even though that exact same thing just happened for Sean Strickland. Man, it's crazy. Crazy. Let me know your predictions down there in the comments. If you think that there is a chance of Sean O'Malley getting an immediate rematch, like, what do you think the percentage of that is? Put that down there in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting that subscribe button, and of course, I will see you all in the next one.